Today we're going to be talking about how to quick read a CARS passage. So I find that a lot of students struggle on the MCAT with timing, especially in the CARS section, where sometimes those passages can be really dense, they can be very complex and interwoven, and sometimes they tackle multidimensional issues. So it makes sense that people struggle with timing, and if you're struggling with timing, this video is perfect for you. Alternatively, if you're not struggling with timing, but you just want that peace of mind, because on test day, right, it can be pretty high anxiety, and let's say one passage takes you a little longer than intended, then maybe you're running short for your last passage or two. And this video is perfect for how to get through those passages, how to stay calm, and how to get the information we need. And I will say in general, I think this quick reading strategy is great for improving overall comprehension because it tells you where to look for certain components, what types of questions are going to be asked about those components, and how to get the information when you need it. So really important. I also want to say there are a lot of alternative strategies out there about how to ace timing on the MCAT within the CARS section, and also not within the CARS section. So I've seen many different strategies. I've seen people skip directly to the questions without reading the passage first. I've seen people preview the questions, read the passage, go back. I've also seen some students prefer to read the first sentence of every passage in the section and then find one that looks easy to them and start there. So if you have something that works, great, but if you're looking for new ideas, then this quick reading strategy really might be the thing for you. So first let's talk about what is the ideal timing for a CARS passage, and then we can talk about how to quick read one and what type of information we're looking for. So on the full-length MCAT, we have 9 passages, right, in 90 minutes for the CARS section. So that's about 10 minutes per passage. So personally, and this really is a personal recommendation, like I said, there are a ton of different great strategies out there. And we actually have another video about how to find the perfect or ideal time per passage to meet you where you're at on our website. So please go check that out. But like I said, my personal recommendation is a good goal is 9 to 9.5 minutes per passage. And the reason I say leave an extra minute or like 30 seconds is at the end you might have some questions that you found really difficult and you want to go back and review, and that gives you a little bit of flexibility. But once again, go check out our other video about how to calculate the ideal passage time for you. So let's say you have 9 to 9.5 minutes. That's a good goal to shoot for. But this is still a good video to watch even if you're under that, because like I said, who knows what's going to happen on test day. You might be a little bit nervous, and I'm sure you want to be as prepared as possible. All right, so let's start on this strategy with all that being said. So there are really 3 main things we're looking for. So we're going to go through one by one, and we will also do an example passage dissection with our CARS quick reading strategy in another video, but this video is mainly intended just to be a solid introduction for you. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to read the entire first paragraph of the passage. And that might be like your normal strategy, right? Most people read the entire passage through. So we're going to start by reading the entire first paragraph. And when we're reading through this, there are a few things that we want to keep an eye out for. So the main reason or the information we want to pull out is the why behind the passage. So why is the author writing this, right? They could have chose not to write this. They could have not, they could have spoke this. Why are they writing this? And why are they writing that in this format? So that's the first thing we want to look for. And the second question we're looking to answer in our first paragraph is the what. So what is this paragraph about? What is the entire passage about? So just kind of getting a feel for the content material. What are we reading about? So this paragraph, the first paragraph, will typically give you a really solid introduction. And in order to figure out where that information is, right, we're going to want to look mostly towards the second half of that first paragraph. So, for example, you might remember from your English classes in middle school or high school that in our typical 5-paragraph essay, your thesis is supposed to go at the end of the first paragraph. And I find that a lot of authors do keep them there, regardless of whether they're in middle school or high school or not. So we're definitely going to want to look at that second half of the first paragraph for the thesis, where maybe the author is going to outline their argument. They're going to tell us why are they writing. We should be able to figure out the what and the why from this first paragraph. Once we figure out the what and the why or the purpose of the piece, we're going to move on to the middle paragraphs. So for each middle paragraph, we are going to read only the first sentence or the topic sentence and the last sentence. So let's look at what information we're trying to get from both of these. So in the first sentence, we're looking for, like I said, the topic sentence. We're looking for what is the topic of this paragraph. We want to know what is the author's leading statement, what do they want us to get? And authors, just like most of us, if we're really excited to share something and it's a really strong argument, we're going to put that at the beginning of our speech. So that's why we're looking at the beginning, that first sentence of the paragraph, to figure out how that works within the author's argument. And we also want to look at, kind of as we're going, seeing if we can build some type of concept map or some type of idea of how the author is structuring their argument. This is really helpful for questions about, for example, if you take away this piece of evidence, is the argument still strong? Well, I don't know. Let's look at how the argument is structured. So if you want, as you read through this, you can keep a little concept map on the side of what you learn in each first sentence of the middle paragraphs. And then we're also going to read the last sentence of those middle paragraphs. And the reason for that is we want to see how the author transitions. So between one paragraph and another paragraph, is it, the first paragraph is about why, the energy infrastructure of the US is a good idea. It's very solid. And is the next paragraph starting with, although this may be true, and it's talking about counter-arguments. So reading that first and last sentence of those middle paragraphs really gives us a good idea of the author's arc of their argument and how they're placing it together. And you might be a little bit concerned right now, what about the middle of those middle paragraphs, right? Well, that's typically where examples come in, and the author offers this evidence and they offer this support, which is great. But if we're limited in time, we're going to want to focus on the main tenets of the argument. What are those, rather than how are they supported? And the great thing with cars, right, is if we are asked a question about the middle of one of those middle paragraphs about a very specific example, maybe we're asked to draw an analogy from that specific example. The passage is still there, so we can always go back and refer to the passage. So it's not like if you don't read the middle of the middle paragraph in your first read, you're never going to see it again. You will definitely have the chance, and you can go back and read that section in a little more depth if you are asked about it. But remember, the point of this strategy is we want to cut some stuff. That way we can read through the passage a little bit faster and spend more time on the questions. Like I said, the passage doesn't go away, so we can always refer back to it. In our first read here, we're really just trying to get a sense of what's going on in the passage. And remember, we're looking in the first paragraph for the what and the why in the author's thesis. We're seeing if we can figure out what the essay is about, and we're also looking about why the author wrote it. And then in our first and last sentences of our middle paragraphs, we're going to look for how the author is structuring their argument and looking at what types of main and what types of supporting arguments they're using to support this. So that's so far. So we have our entire first paragraph, first and last sentences of middle paragraphs, and then for our final paragraph or our conclusion, we're going to read the whole thing again. And the reason we're reading the whole conclusion is for two reasons, right? So the first paragraph in the series talked about the what and the why. This last paragraph is going to talk about the conclusion, right? What is the final thing that the author is saying? So it's kind of like the what again, but it's more in terms of conclusions. What is their final conclusion? They've gone through all of this evidence, they've given all their examples, they've introduced the topic. What is their main takeaway? So we want to look at the what again in that last paragraph. And we also want to look at the tone. So this is the author's very last paragraph. They're going to put all of their cards out on the table, including how they feel about the issue. So we're going to look for tonal words. We're going to look for, although this argument may have been strong, here's a weakness, right? Then we know the author has a nuanced perspective. Or maybe they're going to say, all in all, this evidence shows that the energy infrastructure is currently horrible. And that's something that we can use to understand what the author's opinion and what their tone is on the subject matter. And you've definitely seen questions before, or if you haven't, you will, about what is the author's opinion on this issue? What is the author's tone? And that's really useful. And then we can also apply that to questions where they ask, what do you think the author would think about this? And we're going to have to find what the author's opinion and tone are, and that can help us find the right answer choice and also narrow them down. So in the conclusion, we're reading the entire thing, and we're especially looking for what is the main argument, what is the big hoo-ha, and also what is the author's tone or what is their final opinion. So that's what we're looking for in the conclusion. So let's go over this strategy one more time, little less detail. First paragraph, entire paragraph, we're looking for the what is this passage about and why is the author writing it. We're reading the first and last sentences of the middle paragraphs, looking for how the author is building their argument and how they are transitioning between these paragraphs. We're not paying attention to the middle because we don't necessarily need to know the evidence or the examples that the author is drawing on for the first read through. And then finally, we're reading the entire conclusion, and the reason we're doing the entire conclusion is to figure out what is the author's main argument and what is the author's opinion or tone on the issue. And kind of pulling all of this together, the ideal timing for this is it's a little bit less than whatever your current reading time is. So we definitely want it to come in under, but there is no magic number for this strategy. Ultimately, like I said, we want to spend less time on the passage. That way we can spend more time on the questions. We can always refer back to the passage if needed, but our main goal is to get the important information out of the passage and give ourselves more time to work on the questions where our answers will get us points, right? Because you don't get points for understanding in your head what the passage is talking about unless you're explicitly asked about that. And I also will say, when you start practicing this strategy, it might take a little bit. I highly recommend you write things down. So, for example, you're reading through the first paragraph, maybe take a pause. It's okay if it takes a while to get through it. The most important thing is you're learning how to pull out this information and you're making it muscle memory for your mind. So like I was saying, for your first example or your first passage, you're reading the first paragraph, maybe take a second and write down, what is this passage about? And you write your one-word answer, and then you write why. The author is writing this to persuade, to explain, whatever the author's purpose behind the paragraph is, behind the passage is. And like I said, it's going to take a little bit of time to get this down, but if you can trace your thought process and see it evolve and improve, and see how much faster you are able to pull out this information, it's a pretty awesome thing to see, and you'll see it happen over time. So don't be concerned if the first time you're doing this strategy, let's say it takes you 15 minutes to read through a passage, that's totally okay, because what matters is you're building that repetition, you're building those mind muscles, and you'll be able to do it flawlessly, or at least a lot easier and in a time crunch on the actual test. You'll become a lot more efficient. And as I mentioned in the introduction to this video, even if you're already reading really fast, I do think this strategy is great for learning where to look for information and where to pull that out. So maybe you'll continue reading the entire passage, but now you know where to look for things. So this strategy could be multifaceted, definitely worth practicing a few times just for the sake of putting your mind at peace in case you run out of time on test day. So like I said, we'll also go through a practice passage together. That will be a different video, so be on the lookout for that, but we're definitely going to go through that together, so you're not doing this alone. During that video, I recommend writing things out like I mentioned before, so writing it out, and I'll also be writing things out. That way you can check your thought process against mine, get some feedback, and you can see where you might be able to improve or clarify or organize your thoughts. So in general, I know that this cars section might seem really tough, and right now maybe you might be reading and taking a while for passages, but it will get easier. You have what it takes. Just a matter of conquering it, and over time it will become easier, especially with this cars quick reading strategy. So thank you so much for watching, and also if you feel like maybe you've practiced this a few times or you're a little bit nervous and you want someone to work through this one-on-one and you want some live feedback, please reach out to MCAT Mastery for a mentor. We're here for you. You have what it takes. It's just a matter of unlocking it. So good luck and have fun practicing this strategy.